It's August, everybody, and that means that we're going to start to get into the busier part of hurricane season. The first 2 months of the season we'll talk about here in a little bit more detail in just a moment, but we had 3 storms, and none of them really were large storms, no hurricanes, although 2 of them did turn out to have some big impacts. So here on this third month of hurricane season, what I want to show you are the formation zones. So where do storms form? Now, this is a little confusing because this map doesn't show where they hit, it shows just where they form. So when we take a look at where named storms or tropical storms form, the main thing that sticks out is this area right here, and we call that the beginning of what's called the Cape Verde season, named for these islands, or we call that the main development region. So this is where we get into August and September, where much more frequent, stronger storms will develop out here. And these are the ones that very often you'll watch and watch and watch, and we can see them coming for 10 days. You know, a lot of times they build up to really strong storms. And a lot of times you can watch them for a really long time, unlike storms that may form here in the Gulf that only give you a day or 2 notice, if you're lucky, that they're going to be moving in. We also have storms form off the east coast of the United States, where, as I'll show you here in a moment, we may have our next system forming. But overall, yes, August typically is a month that's probably something on the order of maybe 3 times as likely to see a hurricane as compared to July, maybe 4 times as likely. It really is a big time change. So named storms become possible across the entire Atlantic basin, which is what we call this, likelihood near the Caribbean islands, and then also likely as we head into the Gulf. Now, specifically for hurricanes, so that's a look just at named storms. These will, in some cases, turn into hurricanes, and when they do, this is where they're likely to form. So we do have a formation zone here in August, in the middle of the Gulf, and then we also have a lot of the same locations here. So from the central Atlantic Ocean back across to the windward and leeward islands of the Caribbean Sea, and then heading up here off the eastern seaboard. Now, the ones that form up here typically move away, so not really a concern for us. Less frequently are locations here in the Caribbean Sea, but the bottom line is the month of August becomes a month where we tend to have a lot more storm activity, and they can form anywhere. Earlier in the season, you know, June and July, typically you're talking about either Gulf, Caribbean Sea, or east coast of the U.S. But August is when things really change, when the area of formation can really expand. So what's happened so far this season? Well, we had Tropical Storm Andrea. That was a completely forgettable, nothing to it storm. It formed out in the Atlantic Ocean and at the beginning of June, and it was nothing. In fact, I think it was only a storm for maybe less than a day. There really was nothing to it. Now, it gets a little bit different when you get to Barry. Now, Barry was a tropical storm, and it hit in Mexico and was a very uneventful landfall. So it didn't have any high winds, it didn't have any big impacts when it made landfall in Mexico. And it was sort of forgotten about. But the thing is, a lot of the moisture from Barry ended up moving north into Texas and got trapped. It got stuck in a steering environment that really wasn't moving it one way or the other. And that was one of the factors that caused the deadly flooding in the Texas Hill Country and in central Texas. So a lot of that was, not completely, but I would say, you know, at least 50% of it was due to the remnants of Barry, which resulted in all of that extremely heavy tropical type of downpours. Remember, we talked about this phenomenon, or this measurement in the atmosphere that we call precipitable water, where it's a measure of, if you took an entire column of air and you squeezed all the rain out of it, how much rain would you have? How many inches of rain would you have? So across central Texas, if you have precipitable water of like 1.5 inches or 1.7 inches, that's a lot. It was up to like 2.5 inches of rain, which is almost off the charts in terms of atmospheric humidity before the big rainfall and the deadly floods. And that was a lot of it from Tropical Storm Barry. So we've learned that around here too, that a storm can make landfall and could have effects that aren't necessarily directly related to the wind and so forth at landfall. Chantal was the next tropical storm, and that one happened at about the same time as the deadly flooding was hitting in Texas, and so it didn't really get as much attention, but Chantal made landfall in South Carolina. It moved up to North Carolina and actually did produce a lot of flooding. That was not too far away from the Raleigh-Durham area. So we've had three. We've had no hurricanes just yet. And the next one on the list is Dexter, and Dexter is probably going to be the storm off of the east coast of the United States. Depending on when you're watching this, it may have formed already. Yeah, so that one may be the next one. It's in an odd location, and the models are a little bit all over the place with it right now. That'll be followed by Aaron, Ferdinand, and Gabrielle. So how are we, we've had three tropical storms. Is that behind schedule? Does that mean we're going to have a less busy season? Well, maybe. So what's happened so far this year, you've probably heard us talk about it a lot, and that is the Saharan dust that has been blanketing the Atlantic Ocean for much of the year. So we'll look at it here coming up in just a little bit. But generally, lots of dust is associated with very little tropical activity. It's rare to have a big, powerful storm form in one of these dusty sort of environments, mostly because the dust coexists with dry air. So dry air isn't usually something that comes to mind when you think of hurricanes forming, but also there is a phenomenon that could happen where the Saharan dust is suspended in the air and it actually absorbs the sunlight. And if it absorbs the sunlight, then it warms up that upper layer of the atmosphere, which stabilizes the atmosphere. So that's one of the things that's been happening so far this year. When you take a look at an average year, this is the average for the last 30 years, they update it once a decade. So this one goes from 1991 to 2020. In an average year, we have 14 tropical storms. 7 of those tropical storms become hurricanes, and then 3 of those hurricanes on average become major hurricanes. Some seasons you have 0, some seasons you have 5 or 6, but in general, 14, 7, and 3. The outlook from NOAA this year that was released right at the beginning of the hurricane season, remember they used these ranges and talked about, at the time how, it's the range is so wide sometimes. I don't really necessarily know what the value of it is, to be honest with you, and I'm not shy about telling you that. 6 to 10 hurricanes, I don't really know what that means for you, but anyway, this is the NOAA forecast here. 13 to 19 named storms, so compared to 14, that's most likely above average. 6 to 10 hurricanes, again compared to average, 7, and 3 to 5 major hurricanes compared to the average of 3. Now, one thing I will point out to you is that Colorado State, Dr. Phil Klotzbach and his team at Colorado State, they update their forecast through the year. So they'll come out with their first forecast in April, then they'll have a June forecast, and then they'll update it later on in the season. So they actually updated it in July and adjusted the numbers downward just a little. So before the season started, and I do believe too at the beginning of the season, they had 17, 9, and 3, I believe. Bottom line is they've lowered all of these numbers a little bit. So they're now going 16 named storms, which is still above average, 8 hurricanes, which is still slightly above average, and 3 major, which is at average. So they're expecting maybe an average or slightly above average season. And one of the reasons they've adjusted their numbers down has to do with what's called wind shear, some wind blowing across the Atlantic Ocean that tends to make conditions sort of more hostile for storms to form. So that's where we are right now. So far, I just don't want you to let your guard down because it is only the beginning of August. We've had some noteworthy storms in the month of August. A couple of them that come to mind would be Hurricane Harvey, which hit in late August. We also had Hurricane Alicia that hit in August. So we've had big August storms and September storms. Rarely, though, have we had strong July hurricanes like we did with Beryl. So that was a very unusual one. All right, so I'm dressed differently because the first part I recorded on Sunday and then I was going to record the rest, but then I said, nah, let me wait because things are going to develop a little bit further as we head into the day here on this Monday. And indeed, we have a named tropical system now. We have a system called Tropical Storm Dexter. So let's take a look at Dexter. This is a complete non-story for Texas and, in fact, for the USA. So this system right now, as of the late morning advisory from the National Hurricane Center, is located off to the northwest of the island of Bermuda, and it's moving to the northeast at 14 miles per hour. The pressure at 10:02, that's not an extremely deep storm, but as far as an area of low pressure, but it's a healthy tropical storm. Maximum sustained winds about 45 miles per hour, and it is exiting the east coast of the U.S. So when we take a look at where this thing is going to be headed over the next 5 days, each one of these points here represents a one-day forecast or 24-hour forecast. So by Tuesday and then heading into Wednesday, it passes well to the south of Nova Scotia in those spots, and heading into Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, it makes its way out into the North Atlantic Ocean, and then by the time it gets there, the water is colder, and probably more importantly, the upper level winds are just full of shear. It's really, really strong upper level winds, and so these things become extra tropical. It's not to say that sometimes they can't still stay potent storms, but instead of being sort of tight storms with all the winds going around near the middle, they sort of spread out, and they become what we call mid-latitude storms or cold core storms. And sometimes they can move by Iceland and Ireland and Scotland and those spots, but most of the time it's sort of unrecognizable by then. So what else is brewing out there? Anything to be concerned about? Not a huge concern just yet, but there is a tropical wave coming off of the west coast of Africa. This one has about a 50% chance of development here over the next 7 days. And then there's another area here. This is kind of interesting because this sort of seemed to almost break off of what became Tropical Storm Dexter. So Dexter moved away and left behind sort of stagnant area of thunderstorms here to the south of North Carolina and out there to the east of Jacksonville, Florida. And so with this just sort of loitering there for the next few days, the Hurricane Center has this with a 30% chance for development. What are our latest models showing? Most likely it is going to be a system that develops slowly and then probably brings some rain to the Carolinas. Let me go ahead here and click on our Fox models, our Fox weather model here. And we will take a look at this one a little bit closer to home. So across the Caribbean Sea, this is now bringing us into Wednesday, into Thursday, Friday, and then stops here. Let me see here, because I think it went past its domain here of time. So it ends right here. And again, it's not really showing much as we head into Friday. Actually, a little bit of a circulation. You see that here to the east of Jacksonville. So that may be, a weak tropical system, but it's not going to have an effect on us here in Houston. As far as what's happening out here, this is just something to watch. You have to, the model cuts off over here in West Africa, but you'll see there that there's a pretty sizable tropical wave, and then that'll move out here into the Atlantic, and we'll see how it develops after that. But for right now, it doesn't look like a huge concern. Let me see if I can pull up here the GFS model, because that one will go out farther for us. And so let me take this for you. Sorry about that. Let me just take you over here, and we'll zip through this one and see how this one is going to do for us. So now here's Wednesday, Thursday. Yeah, so here we go. So check this out. This is now Sunday. So this is 6 days from when I'm recording this, and it's showing a tropical storm, maybe even a hurricane, over here to the north and east of the islands of the Caribbean Sea. So this is one that bears watching, I would say, for the east coast of the United States. In fact, if I were to add time to this, I hate to go out too far, because the farther out you go with a model like this, what you call a deterministic model, you're going to start to get some wacky stuff happening that we don't want to pay too much attention to. You can kind of call it noise. But if we extend this out, let's say to Monday, then it does look like a little bit more of a substantial system. And again, this would be more of a threat to the east coast of the United States. Backing it up here, we can check out this system here off of the east coast as well and just see if it does anything with this. And nothing to it. See right there? See how it kind of comes together right there? That's Thursday. And now into Friday. See, I mean, it kind of does look like it might be a bit of a soaker there for South Carolina, North Carolina, coming up for later on this week, but really not too much to write home about. Let's take a look at this. So this is our analysis layer. This is going to allow us to look at the visible satellite imagery, and we could take a look here at what is going on with Tropical Storm Dexter. Now I'm going to switch this to what is called the floater imagery, and we should be able to get a really high resolution view of this. Let me go ahead and change the color table on this. Yeah, there we go. So if you make the background black, then it allows you to see what's happening easier. And you can see here the center, I mean, you see how that's spinning right there in the middle? I mean, that's pretty cool, isn't it? So even these systems that are sort of seem like they're not very well developed and they're not super strong, it's not symmetrical. So, you know, the top, the upper side of the circulation, I guess the northeastern side of the circulation is where all of the convection is. That's where all the high clouds and thunderstorms are. And then on the east side, there's just very low cloud cover. But you can clearly see here at the end that, you know, this is where that rotation comes in. I mean, it's pretty cool to see right here. You know, there's your area of low pressure right there. So it's kind of cool to see that, isn't it? So let's go back to this and check out the global. Let's see, here's our visible satellite imagery. Whoops. Here's our full disk. So we have that one system there. We have the other system here off the east coast of the US. That one's not very well defined. And then we have an area here that is the intertropical convergence zone, which is a nearly ever-present feature here during the summertime. Right there, it's either the intertropical convergence zone, or depending on its development and its winds, sometimes it's referred to as the monsoon trough. Kind of depends on if the winds are, how the winds are coming at each other. But the bottom line is, this is sort of like where all the lift is happening at the equator level. Shifts north in the summertime, and it shifts way to our south in our wintertime, southern hemisphere summertime. And this is sort of the area along which we see tropical waves form. So that's the area that we'll watch for you as you head into August. So that's about it as far as what's happening out there in the tropics right now.